Boas-vindas a todos. Farei isto em português porque a maior parte das pessoas que aqui está fala português, mas mudarei depois para inglês, dando-vos as boas-vindas e dizendo-vos da importância deste evento. Trata-se do lançamento de uma organização que pretende reunir entidades subnacionais, ou seja, entidades ao nível estatal, regional e também ao nível municipal, de ambos os lados do Atlântico, numa tentativa de contrariar ou pelo menos de mitigar os efeitos das mudanças climáticas. Aqui o objetivo é duplo. Por um lado, e talvez seja a parte mais importante, é de facto trazer para a opinião pública informação sobre esta matéria, mas ao mesmo tempo também fazer troca de experiências entre as diversas entidades participantes e com o público em geral e com a sociedade em geral, no sentido de, por um lado, aumentar a resiliência, ou seja, melhorar a capacidade de resistência das infraestruturas e das nossas atividades económicas às mudanças climáticas e, por outro, promover, tanto quanto possível, atividades que reduzam as emissões de gases com efeitos de estufa, com o objetivo de reduzir, ou pelo menos atrasar, a evolução deste, que é neste momento um dos maiores problemas que a humanidade enfrenta. Para isso, eu gostaria também de vos apresentar o Sr. Marco Pacheco, que é, neste momento, o decano do Senado do Estado de Massachusetts, e é um homem com uma longa história de atividade política nos Estados Unidos, mas também uma longa história de relacionamento com a comunidade açoriana lá e com os Açores em geral. Nós já nos conhecemos há cerca de 30 anos nestas atividades. É um visitante assíduo da nossa ilha, um visitante assíduo dos Açores e de Portugal. É um homem que dedicou toda a sua já longa carreira política a estas causas, e é um homem que tem tido um papel muito importante no relacionamento entre os Açores e os Estados Unidos, e em particular entre os Açores e as comunidades da Nova Inglaterra. Por isso, é um honra e um prazer tê-lo aqui entre nós, e eu gostaria que dessem uma salva de palmas e as boas-vindas aqui a Angra. Muito obrigado.
Let me begin by thanking the mayor for his leadership, not just as a result of today, but for his long-standing leadership, his service, his public service, his career serving the people of Angra, of Terceira, of the Azores, of Portugal. He has been an inspiration to me over a number of years now, and we've known each other. And when I was talking to him about this idea of the development of a transatlantic climate alliance, focusing on the subnational level of governments, trying to reach out to leaders, reach out to leaders at the local level, both public and private sector leaders, to see what we can do together to accelerate the speed at which we are implementing climate action. He, as the mayor, and the mayor of Praia de Victoria, right here in Terceira, both were the first two to sign on as partners with the Transatlantic Climate Alliance. So I want to publicly thank them for their leadership, and in particular for you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership in seeing the vision of what lies ahead, what we need to do as a transatlantic society, as a world society, to try to do what we can to help with implementation of climate policy. As I speak to you this morning, last night, we had the wonderful opportunity to have a concert at the Congress. And when I spoke last evening, I said, I referenced what was going on in Africa relative to climate tragedies that are taking place throughout the world. That there were 72 Kenyans as of last night that were killed in the floods. Over 500 this morning. And in the state of Texas, even more tragedies occurring. Flooding, fires, drought, all the things that are changing our planet significantly to the extent that we will have over 30 to 40 million climate refugees by 2030 or so. And according to the UN, close to 1 billion climate refugees by 2050. If we don't act quickly enough to do what Portugal has done. And if the country of Portugal and the regions of Portugal, and certainly here in the middle of the Azores, it's no mistake that we have our launch here in the middle of the transatlantic region, in the middle of the Atlantic, symbolically to send the message from here to everywhere else in the world that we need to be working together to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, to save ourselves. If you see our website, which is, it's an inaugural opening on the web, the Transatlantic Climate Alliance. In the middle of the Atlantic, we say we accelerate and empower bold climate action. That's the message. And that's what we would like to have people join us to do. Innovative ideas are everywhere, but often cities, states, counties, and regions would benefit from greater collaboration, support, and education to put those ideas into action to address our global climate crisis. The 3 bullet points in red are that we will share best practices, accelerate the adoption of zero carbon technologies, convene climate allies and subnational leaders to catalyze climate mitigation and adaptation. That's what we as an organization seek to do. If you come on to our website, you will see our vision, our mission, and the values that we care about, making sure that local leaders, both public sector leaders and also private sector leaders, heads of hospitals and universities, significant companies that are leading in ways to decarbonize this sector of the economy. And when we look at our work will focus in on specific sectors education and workforce development, green finance, the built environment, adaptation and resiliency. Again, working with subnational leaders, the energy sector, wind and solar and geothermal and energy efficiency and other types of clean energy technologies that exist. The oceans, in particular here, so important in terms of maintaining and preserving the species that reside in the ocean and protecting all of us, the ocean does. It provides 50% of our oxygen. Transportation sector, a sector on food and agriculture, moving forward. Our board of directors, some have been with us for some time, and I've been talking about this initiative now for almost 2 years. Rona Cohen, Deputy Treasurer and Director, Dr. Lucas Stahl, Secretary, Treasurer, and Director, Dr. Joseph Montel, he is a member of the Parliament in Vienna, a local elected official. Richard Delaney, he was one of the leaders that actually moderated panels in Lisbon at the Ocean Conference because of his expertise in coastal studies. And Harmen Dekker, who is with us today from the Netherlands, who has worked with the EU Biogas Association, and I'll have him tell you a little bit about himself and have him address all of us today to share with you why he decided to take the trip to Sarah these last couple of days to visit from the Netherlands. I want to now, if you'll allow me, share 2 videos with you, actually 3 videos with you, that, and then I'm going to have Harmen come on up and join us and speak. And then I'm going to ask the mayor to come up again to sit with Mr. Dekker and I just to talk about some of the things we see that are taking place in the transatlantic region and how we can work together on some of those things. So let me see if I get this straight here. The first video I'm going to show you is that of a gentleman by the name of Joe Curtatone.
My name is Joe Curtatone, and I'm incredibly pleased to be the president of the Northeast Clean Energy Council, NECEC. NECEC is the largest nonprofit trade organization dedicated to building and maintaining the climate economy by helping companies, nonprofits, and municipalities grow and scale their businesses and sustainable operations. We work across the Northeast and in Canada to find pathways to implement and scale clean energy sources, rapidly expand and modernize our electric grid infrastructure, identify and scale new ways to decarbonize industrial processes, food, large and small-scale transportation and buildings, and build the workforce to power every entity doing the work. Now today, I have some exciting news to share with you. But before I get into that announcement, I want to take a moment to recognize Senator Pacheco, whose tireless efforts in climate advocacy have been inspirational. His work has paved the way for significant climate action, and I am grateful for his contributions and leadership. Now, on to the main event. I am thrilled to announce that NECEC has officially joined the Transatlantic Climate Alliance as a founding member. This is a groundbreaking initiative that has a strategic vision for multiple launches in the future, and we are honored to be part of it. At NECEC, we are all about collaboration. We are excited to work closely with the Transatlantic Climate Alliance, building partnerships and sharing best practices across all sectors. We believe that collaboration is the key to success. That's why bringing together subnational governments, private and public sector leaders, and anyone passionate about climate action is so important. The Transatlantic Climate Council, part of the Alliance, will guide best practices, sustainable pathways, and collaborative efforts to tackle the global climate crisis head on. And as a founding member of the Transatlantic Climate Council, I am fully committed to supporting the exchange of ideas, implementing strategies, and forging partnerships crucial to addressing our shared climate challenges. So let's work together towards a sustainable and resilient future. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing what we can achieve together.
Now I would like to show you another video, and it is really about the New England Clean Energy Center. And the reason why I want everybody to see this here in Europe is because of the work that they are doing in one of the most active economic development areas in America. It's really almost the entire East Coast of America, from New York, including Manhattan, all the way down the coast to Maine.
Anytime we talk about temperatures on the negative side of the thermometer, this also means that we're going to see an increase in risk for frostbite as well as hypothermia.
A monster winter storm, ominously called a bomb cyclone.
It's not just snow, it's wind and cold.
The deadly winter storm hitting Buffalo. More than 200,000 are without power.
Today is expected to be the hottest day of the year in the Northeast, with the heat index topping 100 degrees. July is on track to be the hottest month in history.
Still a smoky haze around and still some
The wildfires are not going to be put out. Many of them are burning out of control.
sewage overflow.
Catastrophic flooding in the Northeast. 8 inches of rain in just hours. The capital of Vermont tonight underwater. The city still deep.
Officials estimate the damage in the tens of millions. Heavy visible damage from the air from southern Vermont to New Hampshire. When
we talk about the climate economy, it involves every innovation, the whole spectrum of solutions that we'll need to bring to market to take on the climate crisis. We have enough technology developed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by more than 60% over the next 10 years, but how do we bring that to bear?
I think we've done the most megawatts in terms of utility scale projects in New England. Most of that has been in Maine. While we're advocating for a project, you can see the importance of actually having an organization like NECEC advocating for policies, advocating among the states in terms of economic development, jobs and businesses. Think about what it takes to put 1,000 megawatts of wind turbines in operation. It'll take multiple years and a lot of companies, a lot of manpower to make it happen.
Clean heat is not an easy thing to solve. It's a giant challenge. For cities like Boston and Cambridge, it's 2/3 to 3/4 of the carbon comes from buildings. And then you think about all the residential units that we have across the region. So I see the mission of the NECEC as absolutely critical to our future, and also to us being able to push the agenda more quickly than we might be able to do on our own.
I'm inspired by, the fact that we can deliver green energy in a big scale. It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of cool technology like the vessel here, right, and the turbines, but it's a passion. I see that in the eyes of my team. They get up every morning because they want this. It's a passion.
It's a dramatic shift that we're seeing today in energy production. We're seeing a doubling in the amount of wind energy alone since 2014 and a doubling in the amount of solar energy since 2018. The challenge with renewables is that the sun don't always shine, particularly here in Massachusetts, and the wind don't always blow. And so we need to be able to take advantage of these resources when they are generating, and then be able to store that energy when they're not.
As we work to bring value back to communities, to engage in this conversation, NECC was a natural fit for us because we share this willingness to bring positive value back to communities that have been left out of this conversation in order to achieve successful renewable projects.
The Clean Energy Days that NECC hosted were incredibly valuable for us. We met a number of state legislators that had maybe heard about grid-enhancing technologies but weren't completely familiar, and really started some great conversations there at the State House in Maine and Connecticut, and have continued those relationships and found it to be a great opportunity to educate on a new way of building grid capacity.
We drive innovation in a very unique way at the Northeast Clean Energy Council. We are a trade organization. We have more than 300 members circulated through our accelerator program of Clean Tech Open, our partnership program of Navigate, more than 900 startup companies.
So MassCEC has been a proud partner with NECEC's Clean Tech Open Northeast and the Navigate program for over 12 years now. So at MassCEC, we do three things really. One is innovation and technology development. The second is once you have a technology that's commercially ready, how do we get it to scale? How do we get it out into the marketplace? And the third is workforce development. We have about 104,000 people today, and we'll need at least another 40,000 just in 2030, which is a short time away.
When starting a deep tech company, you have a lot of challenges. There is a need to not only de-risk the technology, typically on a long horizon, but also to have a fluency and a literacy in financials, in operational support. Also scaling manufacturing, and really importantly, building and growing a team with an enduring culture. These are all ways that NECC and through Clean Tech Open and Navigate have provided programming for us to really strengthen these business fundamentals.
NECEC for me has connected us to various different corporations, municipalities. So there's many different doors that can be opened. The investor that we actually got through Navigate has opened many of those doors. They've been super helpful to look at grant programs for us in a specific state. They've also helped us with hiring.
You can't have clean tech without talent. People are the driving engine. You can't meet your objectives and your bottom line as an organization without really thinking about how to ensure that you have diverse talent, that you have an inclusive organization, and we need that workforce in the Clean Energy Center. And without those individuals, we are not going to be able to meet a just transition, nor meet any efforts around decarbonization as well.
So when it comes to collaborations between Clean Energy New Hampshire and NECEC, obviously we're collaborating closely on policy matters, but also we're collaborating really closely with Barry Reeves, who's in charge of DEIJ and workforce down at NECEC, looking forward to how we can crack that nut here in New Hampshire, because workforce is a huge problem here. And of course, environmental justice is something that the entire nation is looking to grapple with. And those are areas I think that we're going to have really fruitful partnership in the years to come.
Solar as an industry has historically been really accessible to people who can afford it. And Nexam is making really big strides to make sure that we're addressing communities that can't generally afford it or don't own homes and can't put PV on their roofs. And so I think bringing solar to those communities is really big, but letting them see representation in our workforce as well is going to be huge going forward. When I interviewed, I was one of 3 women in the room, and when I finished my interview and they asked if I had critiques, I just mentioned that it was kind of a bummer to not see any women represented in a construction-based field that they're trying to bring inclusion into. And as a queer woman, it's really important for me to see representation on both fronts.
I was always the only woman of color in the room, and more specifically the only woman, especially when I entered the geothermal and heat pump space. And so by getting out there and starting Impact Energy, I have the real advantage of creating my own business and making sure that as I hire and take on projects, we can diversify what the workforce looks like and who we're doing projects for and with. Part of the benefits of being part of NECEC is really growing my social capital, getting to know some new connections, determining how I'm going to monetize my business to make sure I can have a lasting legacy in this space.
We drive policy by bringing the perspective from industry, our members, what it takes for policymakers at the national, state, regional, and local level. What do we need to unlock an investment?
I also want to acknowledge the Northeast Clean Energy Council. And I say that because, Joe, I appreciate all of your efforts and your partnership. I think one of the things that's special about Massachusetts is this secret sauce of people working together in government, state, local.
Connecticut is a small but mighty state. We have a lot of excitement and energy about what we do on the state level, policies that are shifting the way that we think, but we are also a small state. And so opportunities like NECEC afford us the ability to share knowledge and information about what's working in other states. How do we learn and build programs that can happen across borders? A great example of that is the Clean Energy Corridors program, thinking about how do you build the clean energy that goes from Massachusetts all the way down to New York, and how can we be supporting that from both the technology side and also from a state policy side.
Our legislators are constantly asking us, what are the other states doing? What examples can we follow? And so by being plugged into NECEC's network, we've got our finger on the pulse of what's happening all throughout New England. And that helps us educate our legislators about what the options are, what's viable, and what's working to bring more renewables online and address the crisis in our region.
NECEC plays the role of that convener, connecting innovation with investment, and work with our partners and stakeholders and allies fighting for economic justice, green jobs, environmental and social justice to create those equitable pathways to drive that economy.
You can accomplish more in an event like this than you can in 2 weeks of Zoom meetings. You get to have really great conversations and then have really meaningful follow-up. We're trying to use technology to make this an equitable transition. We can look at all these awesome federal opportunities and all these funding opportunities, and we can forget about the areas that those funding sources were designed for. Part of the partnership with NECEC and other companies that are here is bringing them together to say, hey, how can we bring these solutions to these places first before we bring it to mass market?
NECEC's core competency has always been about convening different stakeholders to engage in a dialogue about challenges we face to address climate change. And so events like today are really important to discuss an issue like the Massachusetts Climate Bank.
Going to an event like this, I think it's important for us to be all on the same page. If we can find sectors where we're aligning, I think that'll make it a lot easier to go state to state and to our neighbors, see if we can work on things together.
We are a consortium of like-minded energy users with that mission of reducing costs. Get the power, the buying power of a bunch of organizations together. And now what we're talking about collaboration is we know that brings the best results and it doesn't leave anyone behind.
If you're a company or an innovator that's not yet a member of NECEC, you should join because we are that connector to partnerships, demonstration projects, pilots, investment. The climate crisis compounds over time, and we don't have time to wait. We need a whole of society behind us, working together with innovation, with industry to take on our climate challenge and build this new economy.
And I have one final video, which is a very important one. that I want to show you today because it's an announcement from former Vice President Al Gore about the Transatlantic Climate Alliance.
I'm excited to congratulate the Transatlantic Climate Alliance on the launch of your incredibly important effort to accelerate climate progress at the subnational level. And on a personal note, I want to applaud my good friend, Massachusetts State Senator Mark Pacheco, for leading this effort. Mark is one of the most effective and active leaders in the Climate Reality Leadership Corps, and I'm thrilled to see this effort come together under his initiative. In many parts of the world, subnational governments have become the standard bearers for climate action. In countries where national leadership has lagged, city, state, and regional leaders have often stepped up to take the lead. And in nations with ambitious climate goals, it is subnational governments that are leading the vital work of implementation, putting in place policies that are cutting emissions and growing the clean energy industries of the future. The governments and the leaders represented in this alliance are real trailblazers. You are the guides that many other officials will learn from and follow. You've achieved early successes and have developed pragmatic solutions for some of the roadblocks that threaten to slow your progress. But even with all these efforts, we have to acknowledge that the climate crisis is still getting worse faster than we have yet implemented its solutions. And that's why the work of collaboration is so essential, because we know that this crisis is only going to be solved through collaboration. No single state or city or province can do it by themselves. We understand that. It's going to take all of us. And by sharing best practices, by discussing how to overcome challenges to progress and encouraging greater ambition among your peers, I'm very optimistic that this alliance will help to foster the kind of collaboration that is essential to the global efforts needed to solve the climate crisis. And we can solve it. I'm convinced we will. So let me once again congratulate you on the launch of this effort. And now let's get to work. Thank you.
You can just go back to the website. Thank you very much for that technical assistance. I need it. I'm the technologically challenged senator. Let me just conclude my remarks by saying that we have announced the Transatlantic Climate Alliance today. And this initiative, we seek to have other launches in different parts of the transatlantic region. For example, I will be going in September to Vienna, where we will be represented at a conference where there are already 800 clean energy companies from Europe signed up to attend at what is called the Green Peak Festival. We're trying to do the same thing in other parts of the transatlantic region, whether it's European Union conferences, conferences that are held in different parts of Europe. We will try to be there. When we come down to South America and we look at our friends in Brazil, a few of which tried to make it here, but they had some issues that came up at home in the higher education area. It's going to be crucial for us to solve a lot of these climate problems without having the workforce to be able to meet the challenges that are before us. In Massachusetts, and you probably picked it up from the videos, in Massachusetts, excuse me, just to implement the law about carbon reductions, we will need 38,000 more jobs filled before 2030. 38,000 just in that one sector to implement the reality of actually trying to achieve what we already said we wanted to have in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Same thing is true here in Portugal, throughout Europe. Although you have some advantages that we don't have right now with a workforce from outside Portugal that speaks Portuguese, and that's the Brazilian workforce, working together with other Portuguese-speaking countries, that there are opportunities to try to meet some of the employment needs of the country of Portugal. But I must say that I've been so impressed with what I've seen take place here in Europe as a whole. We would not have offshore wind being developed in Massachusetts today if we as legislators in the subnational area were not educated about what was going on in Europe. I was on a ship off the coast of Lisbon a number of years ago. I was out to Denmark, seeing what was taking place there. In the UK, looking at what took place there up in, Scotland and other places throughout Europe to educate ourselves, small groups of legislators from Massachusetts. And we looked at the policies, we brought them back home. And today, because of that education, we're developing an 806 megawatt offshore wind utility scale project that is already generating energy for over 30,000 homes right now. And these turbines are continuing to be erected off the coast of Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. And there's a domino effect that is taking place in New England that now offshore wind is being developed not just in Massachusetts, but Rhode Island is participating along with Connecticut, Virginia, New Jersey, New York State, New Jersey, I think I mentioned. It's just unbelievable. And then if you go to the West Coast of the United States, with the development of floating offshore wind turbines that have been developed here, there are literally billions of dollars being spent in the development of clean energy technologies, not just in wind, but also in solar, new technologies in solar. And we're learning more and more about the opportunity working with geologists and hydrologists about something that's taken for granted here in Portugal, and that's geothermal technology. I'd like to bring up now a board member of the Transatlantic Climate Alliance, an individual that's been working in Brussels off and on when I'm talking to him on his traveling on the train, going back and forth to Brussels from the Netherlands. He has been working in the clean energy space for a long time, has worked a lot with biofuels and looking at anaerobic digestion technology, bringing methane emissions down. It's one of the things that the EU, the UN, and the Biden administration has agreed on in trying to bring methane emissions down by at least 30%. And he's one of the leaders in this space, along with another board member from Ireland, who was not able to be with us today. But I'd like to recognize for a few words to talk about his experience and what he sees happening in this area, so that you can have a broader understanding as to the vision of the board. Without further ado, Harmon Decker.
Well, thank you, Mark, and great to be here, enjoying the hospitality of Terceira, and also very symbolic, as you said, between North America and Europe. So good to actually be here, and I'm going to take up your challenge to say why I'm actually traveled to be here. To do that, I would like to sketch a few pictures for you. First of all, about the climate change itself. It's going a lot faster than we thought it would. And as it was already said, Mark, I'm coming from the Netherlands. We are already in the Netherlands above the 1.5 degrees centigrade Celsius rise of temperature. We are at 1.7. And this is going faster. And what do we notice then in the Netherlands? First of all, we have more dry and hot summers than ever before. Result of that, I can notice in my own neighborhood where we live, oak trees, birch trees are dying in those very dry summer. Of course, it's not every summer, but when it happens, it does make impact. But we have also the flooding, severe flooding coming in. And something else, which is maybe something related to the Netherlands only, but is the foundation structure of our houses is severely affected by the changing groundwater levels. And this is affecting the people directly. Now, you know that the Netherlands is below sea level. Actually, in American language, that is 22 feet. In European language, that is 6.7 meters at the deepest point. You can imagine that if the seawater levels are rising, and they are, this is going to affect us very severely. And actually, we as humans have caused it. We have caused it with our consumptive behavior, but also with our, how can I say, mismatch of the industrial conduct towards nature. But there is also a positive side on it, because as we have caused it, we can also be a solution towards that. And if we want to do that, that requires change, but it requires also vision on what we want to do. But vision in itself, like grand vision that we want to change the world and combat climate change, is not enough. A vision about new technologies coming on in, say, a decade or maybe longer, and wait for that, is not enough. And actually, most of the things, more often than not, actually, the solutions are already there, and we need to implement it. And I know that Mr. Pacheco is going, I think, tomorrow to Lisbon and to visit also Benfica. And I would like to make an analogy to that. It's about a team who really would like to make an effort to be, say, the champion of the country. And to achieve that, they are having their roadblocks. They're losing matches. And it's not going well. And one football player, really committed, he was saying, all right, let me buy, so he requested this, let me buy the best football shoes there are, give me the best shirt and the newest analytics so I can improve myself to actually contribute to the team and win the matches, because that will make the difference. And actually, although this is a very good commitment of this one football player, he got it wrong. Because what he needed to request is actually coming together, make the investments together, build a team. Because if you do that and you do it in a collaborative way, you can be the all-stars team. And this is what the Transatlantic Climate Alliance is all about. There are already many solutions out there, and we just need to collaborate. We need to learn from each other. We need to implement best practices. So I'm the CEO of the European Biogas Association. It might not say a lot to you. So just a few words on that. Biogas is actually a green gas. And just to give you an example, we already in Europe are producing so much green gas, so much biogas, we can offset the total country use of fossil gas of Poland. So the whole country of Poland, we can already provide with green gas. In 2030, Denmark, again a front runner, wants to have all their gas in their gas grid green to be biogas. So I'm working with my team of 20 people within Brussels to make that happen, to make sure we influence policies in the right way to implement sustainable biogas into Europe. Beside that, as we are working with renewable gas, I'm also part of the United Nations Economic Council of Europe. Actually, this is a council where the USA is also part, funny enough, but also Russia on the other end. And it is good that we work together with those countries to actually make a change. But it's going slow, even though it's needed. So what really is needed and what really makes the change happen is this work at the transnational, of the subnational level. And that's where we do the best practices. We share the best practices, make our heroes to provide the examples on what we can do and spur the investment and encourage a fast climate combat change. And with that, I think I'm not doing something wrong, but we can do it later. But with that, I would like to also recognize Mark for his work that he's been doing. He's being relentless in setting this up, never giving up. Actually, when he is sometimes calling me, it is 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in the USA whilst I'm just coming out of my bed. And this is what we need. We need to make sure that everybody, also each of you in this room, is going to contribute to this collaborative effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haman. I'm sorry for those early morning calls. It's interesting trying to work in a collaborative way across the transatlantic with the different time zones. I'm not typically an early morning person, but when I'm on East Coast time and I'm here, then I'm early, for a lot of events because of the time difference. I just want to also say that one of the things we announced today, obviously Al Gore announced it today, is his support for this initiative. I can't tell you how humbled I am that he has done so. That is quite significant when you think about it. Here is an individual that has worked his whole life to try to engage all of us to focus on the climate crisis before us. And he's thought enough about this vision, our mission, and the values that we're putting behind this, and the focus on subnational governance and subnational leadership, to come out himself publicly and endorse what we're trying to do. I want to publicly thank him again for his leadership. I was with him a weekend ago in New York City when he was training 3,000 new climate leaders in what is called the Climate Reality Project. And people sit down, they learn about the science. He has many keynote speakers from around the world that come in and educate individuals about the climate issue. First time I did that was in Nashville, Tennessee, with Al Gore, training a much smaller group of people. There were about 150 of us in a hotel conference room. And he personally trained us on the science, brought in some of the leading scientists in the world at that time to educate us about what was taking place and why we needed climate action now at that time. Well, climate action is taking place in Europe. We've seen Europeans lead in so many different ways. And we haven't seen the same urgency in other parts of the world. And yet, when he came out with a documentary, The Inconvenient Truth, that was a call to action for all of us to be that much more educated about what was going on. And we're changing in America. So many states now have leading climate policies. And when America changes its mind and we start to move forward aggressively, we can do things pretty quickly. When our economy is really moving in the right direction, and if we're going to embrace this clean energy economy, and that's starting to happen. And that's why I know it took a little while, but that's why I really wanted you all to understand the significance of the founding members of the New England Clean Energy Council, because these are a group of companies that are significant in terms of the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that are invested in the clean energy sector, that are coming up with solutions every day that will allow us to move forward more rapidly than we've ever had the opportunity to move in the past. Finally, I want to thank the mayor again for his willingness to host us, to do things that I'm sure he didn't think he'd be asked to do when I first started talking to him about this initiative, and the tremendous leader that he is, so humble himself. I've learned from him, and I see him having people moving forward and trying to get things done to satisfy him personally, because they want to try to make sure he is he's happy with the end result because of how proud he is of what he has been working with here and how much he loves this city and this country and this region of the world. So thank you so much, Mayor. And I was wondering if I could have you come up one more time and put your government hat on when you were back as a environmental minister, as an education minister, and as the mayor now, and the other types of things you see happening here that maybe we should take a lesson from, or something you think we should be considering as we move forward with the Transatlantic Climate Alliance, because obviously we want you to be a significant partner in it because of your background. You have spent just a few days in a classroom as a professor talking about all of these issues. And so if we were your class today, and I consider myself as one of your students here, please share with us some of your comments based upon what I believe is an historic day here going forward, how we can help change the entire region of this part of the world together. And I know that's a tall task, but I know you're up for it. So let's give the mayor a round of applause and ask him just to give us some comments. And thank you. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank the senator for the kind words that are definitely undeserved. I'm humbled by his appreciation of what I did and what I do, but basically it's his friendship talking, not the reality. So thank you very much. Well, actually, the climate change is something that at this point in our history and the history of mankind is science. It's proved. There is no doubt about it, and we also know the cause. The cause is the atmospheric changes that the release of carbon dioxide and other gases are introducing in our planet. Those are facts, and although we have some people that still try to discuss this, it's not worth discussing because all of us, we are seeing what is happening. Science is clear. The results of the analysis and the results of the climate observation all over the world are extremely clear. It's unmistakable. And because we know the cause, we also know that we only have two things to do. One is to mitigate the effect. We cannot stop it at this point. We already went definitely over the threshold where we could revert it. We have to live with it so we can mitigate the effects, but that's it. The second is to build resilience. Resilience in infrastructure, resilience in our economies, and resilience in the way that we as a species, as mankind, can deal with something that at this point is inevitable. So it's in this framework that we have to work. I will start by the resilience side. Building resilience against something as big and as general as climate change is an enormous challenge. It's an enormous challenge from the technical point of view and also from the economical point of view. In our case, looking at what we do here, we definitely will be in need of overhauling most of our harbors. We'll be in need of coastal protection, but we are, when you look at the global arena, we are kind of blessed because our islands are high, naturally high. Although we have infrastructure close to the coast, we live in high land, in islands that are quite different from those from the Pacific or from the Indian Oceans, where most of the land is a couple meters sometimes above sea level. Definitely we are living in a world where some of the island nations are going to disappear within the next century. And this is an enormous challenge for them, but for the whole humankind, because definitely that is not an issue that is just for those islands or just for the peoples that live in the coastal regions. That's a global issue. The second big issue, and it's the economy. We are seeing more and more land that is being changing in such a way that makes agriculture impossible. And of course, there are also places that are beneficent or being benefited by the change. Let's think about Ukraine or Russia or Canada, where you have more and more land that can have other uses. But of course, the ones that are losing their productive capabilities will have to move. And that's when we start looking at a world where climate refugees are on the move, and they are more and more. And of course, that comes into the way of a very sensitive issue in Europe and in North America. Well, actually in the transatlantic region, immigration. Without good immigration policies, the world is going to go definitely through very difficult times, because these people need to move. At the same time, we need them, but at the same time, we are not accepting them. So we are really going through a very complex time where we'll have to look at immigration also in the setting of climate change, because climate change is one of the motors of the immigration issue. The second question has to do with economy, especially with agriculture. We have here the representatives of the agricultural sector, and they are in the forefront of climate change. Not only because of the changes in the production that they can, or that the farmers can get from their land, but also because agriculture is one of the motors of climate change, because the farming business is also a big producer of gas with greenhouse effect. And that's a serious issue, because we need to invest in the necessary changes. It is possible to still produce the food that the world needs with a smaller contribution to the atmospheric change. So that's another big challenge that we have in front of us. And it's a challenge that is particularly difficult, because traditionally the farming business is conservative, is not very much open to changes, but definitely we all have to change, and we'll have to change together. Protecting them, the farmers, because of course they are essential for our survival, but at the same time looking at technological solutions that will allow the production of food with less impact over the atmosphere. But the main culprit of climate change is the energy sector, definitely. And the energy sector is an area that we need to change. We need basically to overhaul the whole energy sector. Fortunately, in these last decades, the technology has evolved in such a way that at this point, we definitely, in most of the world, we can use renewable energy sources, and we can produce energy without the use of the fossil fuels, being it gas or coal or whatever. It is possible to do it, but that also requires a complete change in the way that we deal with energy. A change that has to start with the policies, because without a political change and the involvement of the political leaders, that will not be possible. It will involve definitely a change in regulation. The energy sector is heavily regulated, and most of the regulation was done in a different time and in a different set of mind, where basically we are protecting the energy companies and not really protecting the environment. This needs to be changed, and the change is going to be difficult. And of course, we are already, actually, the main enemies of these policies are within the sector, because the resistance to change is big, and the economical interests that are behind it are enormous. So we need really to invest in policy change, regulation change, to make the renewable energy sources more available, and of course, create an incentive for change. The second question, and also a very important question in the energy sector, is the adaptation of this new reality to the local realities. Each place is a different place. In some regions is geothermal, some regions is hydropower, some regions is the wind, some is the sun, some is a mix of all of these, some is the use of biogas or some other sources of energy coming from biological production. So we cannot really have a solution that is the same solution for the whole world. We have to look at the reality of each place and adapt the solutions to the availability of energy in that place. Looking at these islands, we definitely live in a place that is extremely rich in energy. Actually, any of our islands could, with the technology that is already available, could be totally independent in terms of energy. At this point, if that was our will, we could be not importing any fuel whatsoever, because we have the energy here. We have the geothermal, we have the wind. We keep complaining about the wind, but at this point the wind can be a resource. We have the sun, we have the water, we have the ocean. So we have all kinds of energy available. What we need is the will to change. What we definitely need is the political force, because it requires some energy, political energy, to change. We have a monopoly in the area of the electricity that needs to change, because without that change we will not reach our goals. We have a fiscal system that needs to change. At this point it makes no sense to subsidize the liquefied petrol gas at a time where we need to do away with it. So we need to change all of that. And I'm using the Azores as an example because the issues here are not different from the issues elsewhere. And this means that we need definitely to change. But change will only be achieved if the political leaders have the support of their people. It points to another important issue, education. We definitely need to educate our citizens to the need to change. And that is a basic issue. Without doing that, the political leaders will not respond to what we see as needs in terms of the energy and the climate challenge. And without that, there will be no political support for what needs to be done. So education is also an extremely important issue. And finally, because I'm exceeding my time, finally, there is the technology side of the question. At this point, we have available technologies for most of the challenges that we need to face. But some of those technologies are still too expensive. They are still not widely available. An essential question is the batteries, the technology for the batteries, because that is the key for the automotive market and is also the key to the regulation of the networks. Most people live in big countries or in continents where you have such a big and wide electrical grid that it kind of regulates itself. It's not the case in smaller isolated grids like ours. Here, to keep the voltage and to keep the frequency of the grid, it's a challenge. And it's a challenge that can only be answered with the batteries, good batteries, that can react in milliseconds to the changes of the grid and can keep the grid stable. It's not only changing the production from when we have wind to when we do not have wind, it's also keeping the grid stable. This is also a challenge in most of Africa, where they do not have a grid, a continental grid. They have basically, it's like islands, although islands in the middle of the continent, or to Australia, or or India, to most of these parts of the world. The challenge is still here. And of course, to have technology, we need to have people that know about this. That means higher education has also to adapt and we need more degrees on renewable energy, on mechanical engineering, chemical engineering. We need to invest in preparing the technical people that we will need for this change. Unfortunately, here in Terceira, we went one step back. For a while, we had a degree, a BS degree on renewable energy that unfortunately closed. The university had to close it because of lack of students. Let's hope that we can revert and restart that, because it was extremely important and is extremely important for our economy. Well, I think I already spoke a little bit too much than what the Senator had asked me. I want to thank again Senator Pacheco for the very kind words that he said about me. Thank him very much. Thanking all of you, the ones that came from outside, for coming to Terceira. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us. And of course, thanking the Senator for choosing this place for this initial lunch. That will put us in the history of the organization. And that is, of course, something that we are very proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much, Mr. Mayor. And as all of you have just witnessed, not knowing he was going to speak, not preparing for always prepared. Yes, you are. And you saw the significant amount of knowledge that this man has, about education, the environment, all these key points that are here. And he is at the end of his mandate soon. And I believe that society in general will miss a lot of his leadership and his abilities. I, too, have decided not to run for re-election. So at the end of the year, I will not be a Massachusetts state senator any longer. But Mr. Mayor, that means we have some time on our hands, and we can put some of our time into the work that we are talking about today, to stay involved and to try to help solve the greatest challenge that faces all of us in the world today, and that's climate. I want to close by, and it's amazing when you listen to what the mayor just said and what was said a couple of years ago by the Secretary General of the United Nations. And the Secretary General said, as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said a few years ago at the conclusion of COP26 in Glasgow, referring to the level of progress achieved at the conference, quote, "The approved texts are a compromise. They reflect the interests, the conditions, the contradictions, and the state of political will in the world today." Continue on with a quote, "They take important steps, but unfortunately, the collective political will was not enough political will to overcome some deep contradictions. Our fragile planet is hanging by a thread. We are still knocking on the door of climate catastrophe. It is time to go into emergency mode, or our chance of reaching net zero will itself be zero." So to all of you here today that have taken the time to be with us, and for all of you that will be seeing this recording, later on. I want to invite all of you, everyone, to go to the transatlanticclimatealliance.org. I'll say that again, the transatlanticclimatealliance.org, where you can sign up to be a climate ally. To be an ally in the transatlantic region, so we can help support the political will that is trying to do the right thing here, to help with this fragile planet that we all live on. We would like very much for you to learn more about what we're doing, and hopefully that you will participate with the Transatlantic Climate Alliance. I thank you all very much for being with us today. Have a wonderful day, and that's very easy to do in Angra, right here on the island of Terceira. Thank you. God bless you. Muito obrigado.